When you pull out your credit card, you're basically handing over your DNA to the royal family whose ancestors were kings and queens of England and France. How? Well, for over 900 years, they created systems to keep peasants in debt so they could profit from lending money. The Asquith family, for example, had a coat of arms that looks like this. And they created a system where the king would appoint a treasurer to collect taxes and keep records of who owed what. And guess who got to be treasurer? You guessed it, the Asquith family. So they controlled the money and the records and the king's seal. And they passed these rules down to the next generation, which is why we have things like banking regulations today. And it worked. I mean, we're still paying off our credit cards today. For example, the Black Death hit England hard in the 1300s. But instead of letting people out of their debts, the royal family used the plague as an excuse to take even more money. So when you're paying off your credit card debt today, just remember, you're not just paying off plastic. You're paying off 13th century England. But the crazy thing is, if you go back far enough, you might find that you're related to one of the families that wrote these rules. But it wasn't all good. Let's rewind to medieval Europe. The Medici family in Italy wasn't just powerful. They practically invented modern banking. They pioneered double-entry bookkeeping, complex loans, and international transfers that let them fund popes, kings, and entire wars. If you were a peasant, your children inherited not just your farm, but your debts. Some can trace their heritage back to the Medici's Habsburgs, or English aristocrats who once collected taxes for kings. Today, their descendants sit on the boards of major banks, investment firms, or quietly control vast trusts. They benefit from laws originally written to protect royal coffers, now transformed into global regulations that still make it easier for them to profit and harder on you to escape debt. In a way, your financial struggles are a story centuries in the making, authored by people who share more DNA with medieval lords than with commoners. Fast forward to today, and doesn't that sound eerily familiar? The Federal Reserve in the US, the Bank of England, even the European Central Bank, they all operate on principles first refined in medieval Europe. Lending money at interest, fractional reserve banking. These were radical, often illegal concepts centuries ago, tightly controlled by royalty and their chosen bankers. Today, they're normalized, automated, and disguised as modern finance. But the original purpose hasn't changed. Keep wealth flowing up, debts flowing down. And if your DNA connects to these power lines, congratulations. You might be related to the architects of this entire game. Student loans, mortgages, credit card balances passed down as generational struggle. Because the same rules that governed medieval debts laid the foundation for the laws that protect lenders over borrowers even now. The DNA of those medieval systems is written into your wallet and maybe even into your genes. At the same time, the Knights Templar didn't just fight crusades, they became history's first multinational banking corporation. Pilgrims could deposit money in Paris, travel to Jerusalem, and withdraw their funds from a Templar stronghold centuries before ATMs. These early financial empires were controlled by royal bloodlines, forging a link between money and power that still echoes today. And if your DNA ties to these lines, their influence may run deeper than you think. But it wasn't only about the elite. Feudal contracts forced ordinary peasants into lifelong debt, paying off taxes and land rents that grew heavier each year. Modern banking families still boast about ancient bloodlines. Let's take it a step further. Meet the richest family in the world. They've held the title for 8 centuries. That's longer than the US has been around, longer than the UK, longer than the EU. Their wealth started flowing in the 12th century when royalty in medieval Europe needed someone to lend them money at interest. They turned to the private bankers, the Rothschilds. In the early days, lending money at interest was illegal, so the Rothschilds did it anyway, breaking the law, making huge profits. They lent money to kings and queens, to popes, to anyone who had gold to back it up. Now, lending money at interest is not illegal anymore. It's actually the foundation of modern finance, and the Rothschilds are the reason why. They created the system we have today where the banks make money by lending money, by creating money out of thin air and charging interest on it. And it's made them the richest family in the world. And they grew their wealth for 8 centuries by keeping the gold flowing upwards. Today, the Rothschilds still own most of the major banks in Europe, and they're still making record profits. But for most of us, we're the descendants of peasants who worked the land, paid taxes in weed or chickens, and watched as royal collectors took it all. We inherited the same economic position, striving to pay off debts, watching interest pile up, all while banks, descendants of those medieval institutions, grow richer. Your DNA doesn't just reveal where your ancestors lived. It whispers the story of who was powerful, who was exploited, and how little has actually changed. Templar wealth secretly funding global banks. Or maybe it's a mix of all these ancient powers united by blood and bound by greed. Drop your theory in the comments. I read every one of them. And the best part of this channel is exploring these dark, uncomfortable truths with all of you. If you're new here, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss the next piece of history that still shapes your life today. The same old families, the same old systems, just wearing modern suits instead of crowns. So next time you swipe your credit card, remember, you're participating in a system with roots deeper than most people dare to imagine. The interest on your balance isn't just a number. It is the latest chapter in a story started by medieval kings and their bankers, a story your DNA might be tied to, whether as oppressor or oppressed. The ultimate twist? Many modern financial crises, from housing bubbles to student debt explosions, follow patterns that medieval debt collectors would instantly recognize. Different faces, same tricks. Now, I want to hear from you. Which banking conspiracy do you think is the most real? The Medici family still pulling strings through hidden trusts?